Hi, everybody. My name is Vikram Rajan. I am the host of the show LinkedIn for Lawyers. It's true stories of client acquisition told by attorneys. This video podcast streams live just about every Friday, 1 o'clock Eastern, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Facebook. And you can listen to it as a podcast on just about every major podcast platform, all four of them. Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, which I personally listen to on my Android. So it's relatively easy to subscribe and review and catch it one way or another. It's relatively easy. I am also the co-founder of Video Socials, and we are a business community of attorneys and accountants, coaches and consultants. And we come together in video blogging clubs to record together, fun and done. A lot of our members also record podcast promos and other types of topics that help them brand their expertise. Today, I have a longtime friend and colleague, Katherine Miller, and I'm looking forward to have this conversation. It's under the auspices of a show, which always feels kind of awkward and, like we're pretending to be on a talk show, and we can just have a conversation over the phone. But I'd love to hear more specifically. We'll get to of how LinkedIn has specifically benefited you. Before everybody else's benefit, can you share a little bit about your practice, your firm? What do you do for it?
Sure. I am the founder of the Miller Law Group. We're based in the New York City metropolitan area with offices inside the city and in Westchester County. And we're soon expanding into Connecticut, Fairfield County. I've been a matrimonial lawyer for 35 years. It's a ridiculous thing to say. And I'm on a mission to change how people divorce and help them divorce with dignity. And the reason I want to be able to do that is so that they can show up for their kids and move through the divorce process to a better future without the conflict that they are currently going through.
And to parse out a little bit more, and this kind of quick disclaimer, when you typically would talk to Katherine on Zoom or anything else, you would have her earbuds on and you will hear her much more clearly. We just purposely did it. There was a little bit of noise with her earbuds. So rest assured, her technology is on point. Even if you can't listen or hear her too much, she's going to speak loudly. You could adjust the volume accordingly. So don't fret. Katherine's pretty good with all the video tech stuff. To parse that out a little bit more, to go into the kind of way how you help people separate and do it in an appropriate manner for their families. Is it purely litigation? Are there other divorce modalities that you work in? Can you share a little bit about that?
Vic, that's a really great question. I think that the thing that is the most important thing to help that families through the process is to choose an appropriate process for them. And maybe that sounds a little bit of like academic, but what I really mean is the question of how people are going to make the decisions that they need to make in order to get through the divorce process is a crucial one. And really litigation, sure, that's an option. That's sort of the default. If you can't agree to do it some other way, then you're going to do it in that way. But let me just tell you and your listeners first that in New York, 97% of divorces settle before a judge makes a decision after a trial. 97%. And nationwide, that statistic is 95%. So when I say, how are you going to make the decisions? Well, I guess there's a 3% chance that somebody else is going to make them for you, right? But other than that, there's a 97% chance that you're going to make those decisions yourself. And so are you going to do that in the litigation format, having gone through formal discovery process of information sharing on the eve of trial because you're too, please just make it stop. I'll agree to anything. Or are you going to settle in a conference room or in a Zoom room in mediation, collaborative law, and some other kind of negotiation that both parties have to agree to, but that allows them to avoid a lot of what I think is unnecessary pain for most families. Now, listen, in certain circumstances, litigation is the only way to go, and you should do it. And I am not disparaging that method at all. I'm just saying that there's an option that each family has to make. Each family has to make that choice as to how they're going to make those decisions. And that's the first thing that we do in our firm is to help them make a decision, understand the process, understand what goes into each one, understand the time frame, the costs involved, the degree of disruption and disorientation that will go into their lives, and what those are and how it's going to play out for them, and then sort through the pros and cons. So that's the first thing that we do. And then the second thing that we do is that we really think about the people first, not the legal problem. So I think that when people are getting divorced, they have a people problem with a legal consequence, a people problem with a legal consequence, not a legal problem. And oftentimes, you get arrested, you have a legal problem. You have a people problem too, for sure, but you really need to work through your legal problem in order to address that people stuff in your life. But here, I think that as lawyers, if we think about the people first, the children first, their finances, their situation, their jobs, their careers, their wishes, hopes, and dreams, their education, where they are and where they want to go, and then we make the settlement fit that, rather than trying to make the people fit into the way we always do it, that's another really crucial way in which I think we really help our clients make this transition as smoothly. And it's not easy. I'm not going to try to be a Pollyanna about it and say, oh yeah, it'll be wonderful. We'll just eat chocolates and go for massages and everything will be terrific. But it's that we really address the people at the people level, dealing with their people problems, not trying to talk about legal concepts that may or may not actually fit.
And the fact that you're able to bring all the parties to the table and to have that conversation where it is them first and the legal process is supporting what they're looking to achieve for them as a family unit, even if it's separated in household and legally separated, nonetheless, they may be bound by children. And so the fact that you're able to bring that in and to make what probably is a very difficult situation just slightly more easier or productive use of time, I think is pretty remarkable. So kudos to you. And yeah, it's a big number of how long you've been in practice, but it also shares and shows your expertise. You've been there, you've done that. So I'm sure you've worked with a lot of different circumstances. So when did you start getting active on LinkedIn? How early on in your career? How early on? When did that happen? And why did that happen?
Well, I've been doing this a long time, and LinkedIn's been around for a while. I'm
Sure.
kind of a curious person, and so I've been active on LinkedIn for, I don't know. How long has it been around, Beck?
It's a good question. I actually don't remember the exact year Reid Hoffman started LinkedIn, but we could look that up. So did you get suckered into it because you got like an invite, one of those emails of so-and-so added you? No. Yeah.
Sure. And then I got really intrigued by getting connections, right? So
Okay.
I'm trying to increase my number of connections. And so at this point, I have no idea how many I have, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
And, then later on, I started to think about being more discerning
Okay.
about
Right.
my LinkedIn connections. In the beginning, I was like, yeah, I'll say
Well,
yes.
and people have talked about getting sucked in. So Sarah, who's behind the scenes, thank you, Sarah, for letting us know. LinkedIn was started in 2002. So let's say 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So maybe you weren't there 20 years ago, but yeah, in the
No,
beginning, a
but
lot of people
maybe
get
2005, 2006, like pretty
early
early
on.
on. So,
Yeah, people get roped up into that quantity collecting of connections where they want to be over 500 for that 500 plus, and becomes this vanity metric where like how many can I amass, and it ends up spoiling it where you end up not really knowing anyone at
right.
all, and it's cluttered with people that you don't really know, maybe don't even want to know, but you ended up. So when did that discernment start? How many years ago do you think you started getting a little bit more discerning of, I really want to connect with this person?
I think about 8 years ago,
Okay.
and more so over the time. So, in the beginning, yeah, I was just like, yes, 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 yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
just connect with anybody. And then I went to a marketing program maybe 8 or 9 years ago, and that guy said, connect with everybody in the United States, and basically, I'm like, all right, that was my first discernment, and I don't
Okay.
really,
All right. Oh, so that was a real filter for you. It was like
yeah.
U.S. only. Okay.
And then,
Fair.
you get a lot, I'm sure everybody gets these, connection requests with, oh, we can refer business back and forth to each
Yeah.
other. Right. And so, I actually think that means they want me to refer them business. Right.
Very
And,
much
and
so.
so, and so now I try to either it's people I know, like people I
Yeah.
know for sure. There's no, I mean, I never question
Yeah.
it. Or it's people who are involved in areas like there are other lawyers, particularly if they're non-matrimonial lawyers. Like they work as in because that I think could be really interesting to me.
Sure.
My clients need referrals to real estate lawyers and other kinds of lawyers, and that kind
Yeah.
of thing can be really
Yeah.
helpful. I have a handful of financial planners. Financial planners always want to be connected to me because
Sure.
rightly they're not wrong in that
Yeah.
I'm referring clients who are newly divorced, want with money, and
Sure.
want a new investment advisor. But that requires real getting to know someone. I'm not going
Sure.
to
Real
send
real
somebody
vetting process.
right for
Yeah.
that kind of thing just because hey I saw you on LinkedIn. I really want to like a vetting process exactly, and I already so like I'm a little aware of that because I get those all the time, and so
Sure.
I tend not to unless I have another connection with that person. you know they went to a school I went to. They work in a similar field. We know people that I like in
Sure.
common,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like
There's
those are
some mutual connections. That's a big
exactly. There's a
biggie.
reason,
Yeah.
or they said something that was really intriguing to me, not like, hey, let's be connected. Oh, I saw you're really active on LinkedIn. I love your website, stuff like that. Although I love
You
your
don't want the
website
generic.
would
You want some
require,
thought put into it.
yeah, and at least if they love my website, they actually checked out my
Yeah.
website,
Yeah. Yeah.
or
Say something.
they liked a post that I put up and made a comment about it,
Yeah.
and then asked to be connected. Like that's a biggie for me, that
You're
somebody
giving a lot
actually.
of clues to people, Catherine, of how people can get in good graces to you. So you're going to get a lot more comments now. So that's a nice segue. So what are the kind of things that you do on LinkedIn? What are you posting on LinkedIn? What activity do you do on LinkedIn?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we post videos. Thank you,
Yeah,
Video Socials.
I appreciate
We
that.
post blog posts and
Yeah,
articles.
yeah.
We post sort of interesting things that other people produce that we think is really interesting. Uh,
How are you sharing somebody else's post, or are you creating an original post with some link
it
to
depends
other
on what it
people?
is. Like if
Okay.
I see something in the New York Times, I'm going to
Yeah.
create an original post. But
Right.
if I see something that somebody else has posted on LinkedIn, then I share it.
Okay. And how often do you think you're posting on LinkedIn?
I get help with my
Yeah.
LinkedIn
Sure.
account, so I
Yeah.
think we post a few times a week,
Okay, that's a good
and
amount.
yeah, and we try to comment on other people's
Yeah.
posts as well if
Yeah.
we think we have something interesting to say about that. So yeah,
And so you work with a marketing firm or person to do that, to
nope,
help
I
with.
have somebody in house to do it. I have
Okay,
a marketing
good.
assistant, and part of his job is to make sure that we don't disappear off the face of the planet on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter. And we're moving into Instagram and TikTok as well.
All right, so you're gonna see some Catherine's TikTok soon, so
Yeah.
that'll be a different podcast. So that'll be cool. So that's quite active, right? So if you're commenting on other people's posts, you're posting almost daily at multiple times a week. That's a lot of effort there. What kind of return have you seen? Have people come out of the woodwork and give us examples of how has LinkedIn actually worked for you? What kind of client success stories, referrals?
Yeah. I think that it's more successful if you post in groups than if you just post. Right?
Okay.
So you're posting. That's been my experience.
Posting groups mean like literally LinkedIn groups.
Yeah, in LinkedIn
Okay.
groups.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you share content that you think would be relevant to that group, right? So if it's a mediator group, then you share content about, something about mediation. That's not selling mediation. It's
Sure.
something, about the mediation process or something that's really interesting. Like yesterday, I saw a presentation by Dan Shapiro, he's a Harvard professor and a very well-known author in the field of dispute resolution. So I might comment something in a group of mediators about that presentation or something like that. Or if you're in a group of for people who like in my area, people divorcing people, then I might
Sure.
post something more about the divorce itself. We don't always do it that way, but I found that gets more engagement, and engagement of course is what gets to more sort of ROI, return on
Sure.
investment. But let
Sure.
me just tell you my favorite story of getting a client through LinkedIn was it was through a group, and it was referral from someone I had a loose connection with, like I knew, but not well, from Texas. And she had a client in Texas who was getting married to somebody in New York, and they were doing a prenup. So he contacted me through LinkedIn, and he hired me. And we never met, actually. I never met this guy in the pre-pandemic, so it was really unusual to not meet your
Right.
clients.
Sure.
And I did. It was his fiance who was requesting the prenup, so I represented him through that, and that, which was wonderful. And then a couple of years later, his fiance's brother was getting married, and I represented that new family member as well. So
Oh,
they
that's
had
really
two
neat.
kids, two prenups, and I represented both in-laws.
That's really
All
neat.
through like a LinkedIn connection, which was really.
Sure. And that's tremendous. Not a lot of people talk about LinkedIn groups. Very often, LinkedIn groups are shown as like a wasteland and a waste of time. This is a real example where you've been able to make it work. Was that person part of the LinkedIn group, or the
Yeah, the
Texan?
referral source, like we're in the
Yeah, the
same kind
referral
of,
source was
right.
okay.
We were in the same collaborative community.
Okay,
We met, a time or two, but we were in the same LinkedIn group around collaborative practice. And so, I think that that's how my name
sure.
came to up to, into her mind as to who to refer this guy to.
And
Right?
and,
Like,
and a collaborative practice and collaborative law as a modality of divorce is kind of almost geared towards networking and word of mouth from an outsider's perspective. And a lot of people may not even understand what collaborative with kind of a capital C means as a modality of matrimonial divorce. So can you explain, rather
sure.
than me explaining incorrectly, what does it mean to be part of a collaborative
Right.
practice or group?
Well, let me just tell you what collaborative
Fair
law,
enough.
collaborative divorce is
Yeah.
first. Collaborative divorce is a voluntary process where each party has a lawyer, but the lawyers by contract are disqualified from litigating. So everybody has 100% skin in the game to settle out of court, because if the people are not able to settle in the collaborative process, they have to hire new lawyers in order to go to court. And typically it's also an interdisciplinary process, so that we work with mental health professionals to help with the conflict dynamic with the couple, which, as you know, in a divorcing couple can be quite hot at times. And also that mental health professional can help develop a parenting plan for the children that really makes sense for that particular family. And we also work with financial neutrals, and the financial neutrals, well, first of all, they do an amazing thing, and that is that money is such a hot topic in our culture, right? It means so much more than a way to pay the bills, right? It's
Right.
about success and power and how we
Sure.
compare ourselves to our families of origin and our neighbors and our friends. It's so much. Then it develops kind of a dynamic of its own inside of a couple sometimes. And I'm sure you've heard that lots of people get divorced because of money issues. And so one thing that the financial neutral does is it puts some neutrality around the issue of money, which brings the hotness of that topic down. And the
Hmm.
financial neutral can also help develop options for division of assets or for cash flow, help people understand the impact on the future flow of what each option is going to look like. And so we're working in a team as a group, right? In every single collaborative case, you could have 4, maybe sometimes 5 professionals involved. And before people start thinking, well, that sounds super expensive, it's not cheap. But understand that lawyers are doing all those other things, and lawyers are usually the most expensive people in the room. So what we're doing is bringing in professionals who have better expertise, better training to deal with the parenting issues, to deal with the conflict and the emotional issues between the party, and sometimes the financial issues as well. And then the lawyers are left with the negotiation, which is a very big part of it, right? And then figuring out a way to make the legal result what the people want it to be, which is also a very important role in that process.
And
And
so
so
yeah, go on. No, no,
I was going to
finish
say,
your thought.
so typically, in order to put together a collaborative team, you need to be referring people to each other anyway, so that the community of people who train together, in order to work in the collaborative model, you need collaborative training, whether or not you're a lawyer or a financial neutral or a mental health professional, so you understand what the collaborative process is and how to work with the team. So oftentimes there's a sense of community of people who work in that mode, so that there is a kind of natural tendency towards referral anyway. And it's really great
Sure.
to be able to stay in touch with people across the country and around the world, frankly, who practice this way and see how cultural differences in different places and the different, I don't know, culture of the bar, meaning that, how lawyers work with each other and what's
Yeah.
expected and what's not expected change.
Which is great. I mean, it goes back to that global international aspect of your LinkedIn connections. But as you pointed out, it's exactly that makes it really interesting. The interdisciplinary nature of your practice and the way you work with your clients leads it and lends itself to these word of mouth referrals. So these groups, be it literal groups of collaborative professionals or in a LinkedIn group setting where it's just a group of members, everyone's there in it for that same type of purpose of serving the client more effectively. And so I can see how the referrals can be that much more fertile in that type of a group. So that's excellent.
But another group I think is really helpful is my alumni groups, right? So I went to Vassar College, and there's a Vassar alum group, and I've gotten referrals from there. I went to Fordham Law School. I'm not so active in that group, but still, those people don't necessarily do what I do, right? Like I have a pretty niche practice, and even my high school group. So, and there's a sense of affinity, in those groups that we went to school together, and studies show that that's a pretty strong psychological affinity for people, and it makes a big difference, and sometimes clients will see that and say, oh, I see you went to this place. So, I will pick you out of the group of people, right? And that's why I think it's really important to have my LinkedIn profile as me as I can make it, instead of just, kind of going, and I've reworked it a whole bunch of times and I update it periodically to make it seem, alive. And so people have a sense of who I am. And I put some of my videos up there. And so, again, I want people to go to my LinkedIn site, which they do, if you get, all right, I'm going to get 3 names of people,
right?
Sure, you check out their website, but a lot of times people check out your LinkedIn site too and see what you've done, where you've been, who are you?
Mutual connections, are there people in common?
Exactly.
Even if you Google someone's name, your LinkedIn profile very often will come even above your website just because of how search engines work. So the LinkedIn profile becomes a hub. So it's neat that you recognize that. Yeah, it's taken you years, but it's become that evolution where it's become this networking hub for you. So great.
Yeah. Oh, I've learned, I've gotten a lot of advice from people over the years. Because listen, when I first did it, I was like, click, 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 that's it, something pretty rote.
And I think back then, being so early on, where it may be 2000, early 2000s, it was sort of okay. It was a Wild West to where it's like, all right, it was a relatively small population of anyone really on LinkedIn. It was kind of this weird thing to have as a professional social networking tool. At this point, where it's almost commonplace and expected, you have to be that much more discerning, because it's very easy for it to be a complete waste of time, which is kind of the purpose of this podcast, is to kind of show, all right, you can kind of cut through it and there are kind of lessons to be learned. You're bringing out how you're able to be discerning, connecting with people, but you're discerning with being active in specific LinkedIn groups, which is unusual because a lot of people don't put that time together with LinkedIn groups. And, if you alluded to different types of posts, from written posts to video posts. So from that consistency of LinkedIn habits, creates that ROI for you. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, I'd love for you to share something that you really love about LinkedIn, and then you get an opportunity to vent of something that you really don't like about LinkedIn as well, and maybe even shine a spotlight on another attorney that's active on LinkedIn. So let's take a quick break. Do you want your own podcast like this one? My team will do all the grunt work for you. Just show up, smile, and enjoy talking to your potential clients and referral relationships. Go to videosocials.net/govip to watch our 9-minute webinar for all the details. Are you a busy lawyer, coach, consultant like me? You should have a podcast done for you to get you more clients, impress your colleagues, and it becomes your perpetual referrals flywheel. We find you the right guests. We schedule your guests, handle all the podcast tech, get you into Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and more, done for you. Go to videosocials.net/govip to watch our 9-minute webinar for all the details. Now back to the show. And back to my guest, Katherine Miller. So before we wrap up, so share something that you really love about LinkedIn.
I really like the ability to stay in touch with people who I've known in the past, where it's not, I was going to say so personal. It's not that it's not personal, but it's what are you doing? It's the kinds of things that I'm interested in. I don't have to hear about their vacations. I don't have to hear about what they had for dinner or have pictures of their, breakfast waffles, it's this, for
it's
me,
work related.
Yeah, it's work related, and that has more relevance to me. So I really appreciate that.
That's pretty neat. Yeah, it kind of, Facebook is meant to be social. Instagram, TikTok, they're meant to be the trivialities of life in a good way, right? But you may not want to know the trivialities of someone's life, or all these work colleagues of where they went on vacation and how old their kids are, and I'm sure you have plenty of colleagues that you are also friends with and that you enjoy the small talk and enjoy the everyday relationships with. Before the vast number of your professional colleagues, LinkedIn gives you an easy way to kind of peek into their daily work life. So that's great. Is there something that really annoys you about LinkedIn, something that you don't really like?
I hate it when people use it, like approach you for dating, like a dating app.
Oh, okay.
I detest that. Oh, they, link to me, and then they're like, well, I know I'm not supposed to use LinkedIn for you, but blah 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 blah, are you interested? And and I'm like, yeah, no, click
Yeah.
unfriend. I know that's not the right word.
Right. Disconnect.
It's very appropriate for that. I'm like, that's just icky.
Yeah. Okay. Well, fair enough. So so remember not to do that with Katherine. So that's cool. I guess that might be a gender thing, because I don't. No one's hitting on me like that on LinkedIn. Not that I want it, because I'm happily married, but it's I guess that might be a gender thing. So yeah, I could be really, really annoying, because it's like you said, it's a workplace environment as opposed to a social community.
I think that's annoying on Facebook too, but it's just like really, no.
Yeah, especially if it's out of the blue. That's not cool. Is there another lawyer that you know who's really active on LinkedIn and that you're a fan of?
Yeah. I think that Elsa W. Smith, who's in my Video Socials group as well, does a phenomenal job with all of her social media, including LinkedIn. And she's always posting really valuable content, both from her regular videos and her podcast. So I would like to give a shout out to Elsa W. Smith.
Oh, that's really cool. That's really nice of you for doing so. People want to be able to reach out to you in an appropriate and value-driven way. How can they reach you on LinkedIn and other places?
Well, they can always reach me on LinkedIn. I think my LinkedIn profile is, it's KMiller1, or they can find me on the website, which is miller-law.com, miller-law.com, or they could tune into my podcast, divorcedialogues.com, which is also available wherever people listen to podcasts.
This is a good segue. So you can catch, yours is probably on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts and Stitcher, Spotify. Cool. Likewise. And SoundCloud. Cool. Likewise, you can watch this show on YouTube, on LinkedIn, Facebook, just about every Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern. You can go to videosocials.net/watchlfl for LinkedIn for Lawyers, and you can catch it there. Subscribe and review on all the major platforms, as Katherine's show is also aired on those major platforms that you just heard. Again, my name is Vikram Rajan. I'm your host for the show and the co-founder of Video Socials. Looking forward to engaging with you in the near future. And Katherine, thank you so much for being our guest.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Thanks.